July 20th, 1944. 12:42 p.m., Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. The room is hot. Windows are open because of the summer heat. A long oak table fills the conference hut. Military officers stand around it studying maps of the Eastern Front. At the center of the table, Adolf Hitler. Outside security is tight. Guards patrol the perimeter. Concrete bunkers and minefields protect the compound. Inside the room stands Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg. He carries a leather briefcase, and inside that briefcase is a bomb. Stauffenberg is not a British spy. He is not a resistance fighter hiding in shadows. He is a decorated German officer, an aristocrat, a loyal soldier who once believed in Hitler's vision. But by 1944, everything has changed. Germany is losing. The Eastern Front is collapsing after the catastrophic defeat at Stalingrad. Allied forces have landed in Normandy just 6 weeks earlier. Cities burn nightly under Allied bombing. Stauffenberg has seen the war up close. In North Africa, he was gravely wounded by Allied air attack. He lost his right hand, 2 fingers on his left hand, and his left eye. He returned from the hospital disillusioned, not only by military failure, but by the moral collapse of the regime. Mass executions, atrocities, the murder of civilians. He concludes something radical. Hitler must die. The assassination plot is not spontaneous. It has been building for months. German officers inside the Wehrmacht, including General Ludwig Beck and Colonel Henning von Tresckow, believe the only way to save Germany from total destruction is to remove Hitler and negotiate peace. They prepare Operation Valkyrie, originally an emergency plan to mobilize reserve forces in case of internal uprising. But the conspirators modify it. If Hitler is killed, they will use Valkyrie to seize control of Berlin, arrest Nazi leadership, and take command of the government. The success of the plan depends on one thing: Hitler's death. On July 20th, Stauffenberg has his opportunity. As Chief of Staff to the Reserve Army, he has access to high-level briefings. He boards a plane in Berlin carrying 2 explosive charges disguised inside his briefcase. The detonator is time-based, about 10 to 12 minutes after activation. Because of his injuries, arming the bomb is painfully difficult. He must crush the detonator capsule using pliers with only 3 fingers. He manages to arm only one of the 2 charges before being interrupted. 1 bomb instead of 2. That detail will matter. 12:30 p.m., the conference begins. Hitler stands leaning over the heavy oak table, examining maps. Stauffenberg places the briefcase as close to Hitler as possible, under the table, beside the Führer's right leg. He quietly excuses himself, claiming he must take a phone call. He walks calmly out of the hut. 12:42 p.m. The bomb explodes. The blast tears through the room. Windows shatter. Wood splinters. 4 men are killed instantly or die shortly after. Smoke fills the air. Bodies are thrown across the room. Outside, guards panic. For a moment, it seems impossible anyone near the explosion could survive. Stauffenberg sees smoke rising and assumes success. He leaves immediately for Berlin. He believes Hitler is dead. But something unexpected has happened. The briefcase was moved. Moments before the explosion, an officer had repositioned it slightly, placing it on the opposite side of a thick oak table support. That heavy wooden leg absorbs much of the blast. Additionally, the meeting had been moved from a reinforced concrete bunker to a wooden hut with open windows, allowing the explosion to vent outward rather than concentrate pressure. These small changes save Hitler's life. He survives. Injured, shaken, but alive. His pants are shredded. His right arm is injured. His hearing temporarily damaged. but he stands, and within hours, he speaks on the radio, proving he is alive. The assassination has failed. Meanwhile, in Berlin, the conspirators begin activating Operation Valkyrie. They send orders to mobilize reserve units. They attempt to arrest SS officials. Confusion spreads. But as news arrives that Hitler survived, momentum collapses. Some officers hesitate. Others refuse to act. The coup unravels rapidly. Stauffenberg insists Hitler is dead, but proof spreads quickly that he is not. By late evening, loyal forces regain control. The conspirators are arrested. Around midnight, in the courtyard of the Bendler block in Berlin, Stauffenberg and several others are executed by firing squad. His final reported words, "Long live sacred Germany." The immediate result is brutal. Hitler launches a massive purge. More than 7,000 people are arrested in connection to the plot. Approximately 5,000 are executed. Many are tortured. Some are hanged slowly with piano wire. Executions filmed for Hitler's viewing. The resistance inside Germany is shattered. But the plot reveals something powerful. Not all Germans were loyal. Not all officers supported Hitler blindly, and even at the height of dictatorship, courage existed. Stauffenberg knew the odds. He knew failure meant death. He carried the bomb anyway, and he came closer than anyone else ever would. By the evening of July 20th, 1944, the atmosphere in Berlin shifts from controlled conspiracy to frantic collapse. Inside the Bendler block, headquarters of the German Army High Command, confusion reigns. Orders have already been sent activating Operation Valkyrie. Reserve units are mobilizing. SS offices are being surrounded. Communication lines are strained. For several hours, it almost works. Because in a dictatorship built on absolute authority, everything depends on the leader's survival. If Hitler is dead, the structure collapses, and many officers are prepared to follow whoever controls the narrative first. But then the truth arrives. Hitler is alive. At 6:28 p.m., he speaks directly to Benito Mussolini, who happens to be visiting that day, proving beyond doubt that he survived the explosion. Shortly afterward, word spreads across military channels. The coup begins to disintegrate. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, loyal to Hitler, sends direct orders countermanding Valkyrie. SS units regain control of key communication centers. Army officers who hesitated now choose survival. Inside the Bendler block, Stauffenberg refuses to believe it. He insists Hitler must be dead. But doubt spreads among his own allies. General Friedrich Fromm, commander of the Reserve Army, who had initially hesitated, switches sides once he realizes Hitler survived. He orders the arrest of Stauffenberg and the other conspirators in an attempt to protect himself. By midnight, the outcome is sealed. In the courtyard, under harsh light, firing squads assemble. Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg is executed alongside General Ludwig Beck, Colonel Albrecht Merz von Quirnheim, and Lieutenant Werner von Heften. No trial, no delay. Just gunfire in the dark. But Hitler's reaction is even more telling. The failed assassination attempt changes him. He becomes more paranoid, more distrustful, more isolated. He interprets survival as destiny. He tells his inner circle that Providence protected him, that fate itself wants him alive. And that belief hardens his resolve to fight until the very end. The purge that follows is ruthless. The Gestapo arrests thousands, officers, civilians, even family members of the conspirators. Trials are held in the People's Court under Judge Roland Freisler, a man known for theatrical cruelty. Defendants are humiliated, screamed at, denied dignity. Executions are deliberately slow and filmed. piano wire, meat hooks. Hitler personally orders that the executions be recorded. The message is clear. Loyalty is not optional. But here is the deeper question historians still debate. What if the bomb had killed Hitler? Would the war have ended sooner? Would millions of lives have been saved? The answer is complicated. By July 1944, Germany's military situation was already catastrophic. The Allies had landed in Normandy. The Red Army was advancing rapidly from the east after Operation Bagration. German forces were collapsing across multiple fronts. Even if Hitler had died, Germany would still face overwhelming opposition. However, the conspirators planned to negotiate surrender with Western allies, hoping to continue fighting the Soviet Union or at least prevent full occupation. Would the Allies have accepted a partial surrender? Unlikely. The demand for unconditional surrender had been declared in 1943 at the Casablanca Conference. But a power shift inside Germany could have shortened the war. Perhaps months earlier. Perhaps fewer civilian casualties in bombing campaigns. Perhaps fewer soldiers dead in the final brutal months. But history does not pivot on perhaps. The bomb missed its objective, and the war continued. The psychological impact of July 20th is significant. Inside Germany, fear deepens. Within the military, trust collapses. Hitler tightens control over operations. Decision-making becomes more centralized and increasingly detached from battlefield reality. From that point forward, Germany's defeat becomes not just likely, but inevitable. And the final months of the war grow even more destructive. Because a leader who believes fate protects him is a leader who will not compromise. Claus von Stauffenberg's legacy remains complex. For years after the war, some Germans viewed the conspirators as traitors. But over time, perception changed. Today, July 20th is remembered in Germany as a symbol of moral resistance. Not because it succeeded, but because it happened at all. In a regime built on terror, propaganda, and conformity, there were men who chose risk over obedience. Men who knew they would likely die, and acted anyway. Stauffenberg was not perfect. He was part of the German military machine. He fought for it. He served it. But when he concluded that continuing under Hitler meant total destruction, he chose action. And he came closer than anyone else ever did. The explosion at 12:42 p.m. did not change the war's outcome, but it revealed something powerful. Even in the heart of dictatorship, resistance existed. And sometimes, history turns not on success, but on the willingness to try. If you want to understand how close World War II came to ending in July 1944, and how different Europe might look today, stay with this channel, because history is not just about victories. It is about moments where everything nearly changed.